Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the I'll Try That podcast. I'm joined again, as always, with Matt Barber. Hey, stay here, Matt.
Hi everyone, how you doing?
And we have a very special guest. I've got Greg Bateman, the founder of the People's Captain Craft Beer Company. Greg, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you guys?
Excellent, thanks. Yeah, good. Thanks for taking the time to come and chat to us, Greg. We really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
I'm pleased that you've managed to squeeze us in because I hear you're at a trade show right now.
Yes, the good, bad, and the ugly of the on trade at this trade show. Having a good time, lots of great conversations, and just seeing how we can push on with our objectives.
And what part of the country is your trade show?
It's at the XL in London, so it's nice to be here in the big smoke and find a hotel that's not completely ridiculous on the bank account. But no, it's very nice. Being very well looked after. Thank you.
I've been to a few of those trade shows, and they're just it's hustle and bustle. You're just chatting to people the whole time. Are you finding good reception with people? Are people enjoying the chat?
Yeah, I think it's crazy though, because the particular one that we're exhibiting at, you can get an edible straw, a bamboo plate, and a beer and some mozzarella cheese from somewhere, or some poultry from Ukraine or whatever. So it's a little something for everybody at this particular event, and which is great. But it's very overwhelming to exhibit at, let alone if you were trying to run a business and you sort of, I never knew I needed a chicken from Ukraine, but I do now. So it's all good. Yes, and it's come sort of 4 o'clock, everybody's had enough, and they're over at the tap room, and you're pouring pints, which is good.
Well, if I'm honest, out of all of those items that you just listed there, yours is where I'd be heading, making a beeline for. I think, as you said, the tap room is where I'd want to be. It's when you've done with talking about edible straws and bamboo plates, you want to be talking about beer. Well,
you'd like to think so. Although, to be honest, next to me is a new tequila from Mexico, and he tried palming that off to me at 9:30 this morning, and I very politely declined. So
he definitely needs like a time slot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's kind of but I'll get you probably later on, mate, if that's all right. So yes, you sort of pick and choose your moments to rise like a phoenix, and 9:30 this morning wasn't mine, but it was all good. It's all good.
Impressive array of your top flight rugby that you played. So you played at Exeter Chiefs, Leicester Tigers, Newport Gwent Dragons. I mean, you're my token rugby fan, Barber.
Thanks, mate. He's of course alluding to Gloucester. I'm season ticket holder at the Shed, which I don't let him forget too often. But yeah.
Yes, no, I feel very fortunate to have played for the clubs I have, and met some amazing people and had some great experiences. Had some fairly average ones as well, but rugby is an amazing game that is so connected still with the players and the fans, and it's great. And speaking specifically of the Shed, it is one of the best places to play.
See, it's not just me saying it.
I imagine it would be slightly better if you were playing for Gloucester than somebody else, but I have had to throw a couple of balls in front of the Shed, and it's pretty difficult. Pretty difficult thing to do, but there we are. It's all good, thank you.
Yeah, interesting cross-section of society in there. As a card-carrying member, of course.
So, what was the transition from rugby into beer then? How did that all kind of happen?
So I learned to brew while I was at Leicester. I was sponsored by a pub group. Like players have their own sort of individual player sponsors, and the pub group sponsored me, which was amazing. And we sort of chatted about this idea of doing a beer to kind of celebrate that they'd sponsored me. So he sent me down the road to a lovely couple, Andrew and Andrea Reed at Charnwood Brewery. Anybody that's listening in the Midlands, I would highly recommend that you go and check their beers out, because they are sensational. And I just sort of learned what I was doing, and we went to go and do this launch night in the middle of Leicester City Centre. And I suppose anybody that's listening that is thinking about getting into brewing, I should warn them, don't put Manu behind the bar if you'd like to make a scalable business, because nobody pays for drinks. And we had a fantastic time. And I think that, it was probably at the sort of, the start of when I was struggling, and having something to do every 20 minutes for 8 hours was very cathartic, and I certainly enjoyed the process. And ending up with a physical product at the end of it was an amazing thing to do. So I suppose that's the quick answer as to how I got started, and then sort of did a bit more with Everard's, and then thought, actually, I might have a crack at this, and here I am in a hotel outside the XL, wondering why I'm doing it. So we're getting there slowly. Thank you.
You're chatting to us, so it's not quite that you made it just yet. So you've got to still keep grinding.
Never. That's it. Very lucky that they've all been perfect. Very lucky that I was, when I was with Andrew, and Andrew was kind of like, I knew what I wanted and was like, okay, this is the kind of style that I'm after. And then just sort of, it's not like I was just given the brew kit to just go and make a beer. It was very much like, okay, cool, well, we know how we want it to end up, and this is how we do it. And I was, just shoveling things into the hopper to make sure that it all worked. But no, I think that was okay. I suppose probably the big moment that I realised that you kind of can make anything that you like was when I started doing some bits with Everard's, which was really, really fun. And the guy was like, oh yeah, it's February's coming up and we really want a stout. And I was thinking, I don't really drink stout. It's not something I'm massively keen on. But that's because I don't like dark roasted malt flavours. I drink Guinness, happy with that. But, obviously there's plenty in that compensates for the dark and roasted flavours. And I sort of didn't really know how to tell this guy that I didn't want to do it. So I got the father-in-law around and we ordered sort of 30 beers from around UK breweries and just sat at my kitchen table from anywhere from sort of 3% to 25%, right up the scale, wondering what we could do. And went back to the guy and was like, yes, I think around 5. If we use some lactose and make it a milk stout, I'd like to dry hop it, did this. And he was like, yeah, okay, let's give it a go. And it was really, really good. So I was kind of like, oh, okay, well, we'll just make beers we like then, because if nobody else drinks them, then we're having them for Christmas. So we'll crack on.
Just thorough product testing beforehand. That's obviously the key, isn't it?
Crucial.
I love a milk stout, and actually, I think that what you were talking about there, making it a milk stout and then dry hopping it as well. I mean, as you said, it's just kind of craft beer gives you that ability to just kind of do whatever you think is right, or what you think will get the right output at the end. That at the end of the day, you will like to drink. I think that's where I think we're seeing with a lot of the craft brewers at the moment is they're putting their own personal spin on these kind of well-known beers, because it's like, well, I like it, so other people will like it as well. In this way, rather than saying, oh, actually, it has to be about what consumers are going to want. It's like, well, almost brewers are driving that to some extent.
Yeah, I suppose the only challenge I would give to that is, at People's Captain, I have a very different product philosophy to that anyway. So I never make a product based on what's in the glass. We make a product based on a story, a character to inspire conversation and an action, and then we kind of work backwards from there. So I kind of feel like, yes, that's really important, and clearly there's a certain market for certain beers, and it's not like we've chosen our beers because they're really random. That's like 95% of consumer profiles locked up in 5 beers. But I think it's important because, what's the best way to say this? I guess that so much of beer is personal perception and personal choice. I never try and spend my time telling people that my beer is better than somebody else's beer. And actually, I think People's Captain is about consumers. It's about them, and we're trying to inspire them to look after each other. I'm not trying to tell them that they should drink beer like mine or whatever. Actually, they do that anyway because they believe in what we're doing. I do an amazing job of talking the beers down, but they do stand up for themselves.
All I was going to say, you're getting quite a lot of reviews on the website, which is saying, like, to the contrary of that, of how good the beers are. People really recommending the lagers and stuff. So as you said, it's like, I think you're delivering on that. So
talk to me more about the philosophy of People's Captain and kind of what that's about.
For sure. Well, I think probably a good place to start is how we started and what we're trying to do, and then that'll make sense. But I had what I suppose people would define as a mental health crisis. I didn't have a bleeping clue that this was a thing, because stigma is an interesting thing to talk about, but this had never come up in conversation with my mates, or was never educated about it at school. I had no idea what had hit me, and I didn't know how to process what I was going through. My best mate from school was trying to get me out for a pint for ages, because when you make there's something up with your mate and you don't really know how to start that conversation. You're like, are you okay? How are you really? The old ask twice thing. And he knew something was up, and finally we went and had a beer, and then I was just really honest. And people often say, like, oh, that's great that you found a time that you could be honest with somebody. But actually, I think it was probably the first time I was honest with myself about how I felt, because until you start talking to somebody, you don't really know what's going on, right? So this was sort of all around the time that I was learning how to brew, and I kind of figured that actually there's these social moments that happen all the time. We catch up with our mates for a beer, we go and watch the game, we pop round and crack a beer open before we have Sunday lunch or whatever. And I wanted People's Captain to stand for those social moments that happen all the time, meet people exactly where they are, and just ask them to make them count.
Yeah.
So we make it count by we donate to mental health charities through the sale of our beers anyway. How we ask people to make it count of their mates is, why don't you check in on them, ask how they really are? Why don't you start a conversation, or why don't you ask more questions that you just might find out more about how things really are? Because I feel like there's a pyramid to mental health: social, psychological, biological, right? And there is so much that we can do on a social level that will have a massive impact on the amount of people that end up needing real support by psychiatrists or psychologists. Now, full disclosure, I have been on all three of those levels of the pyramid, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm certainly not saying that drinking beer is the answer to all of those things. I'm just saying that there are these moments that are happening all the time, and I just want people to, or I'm inviting people into that same space that I shared with my mate, and that's, I suppose, where we're carving out that niche. So in answer to your question about half an hour ago, before I started waffling on, is when it comes to product philosophy, at what point during anything I just said can I remember what beer I had with my mate, or can I remember anything else about it? I remembered that I was in a safe space and felt like somebody would listen to me. So I don't know how important it is that I tell you that it's a 4.2% session American Pale Ale with a citrusy kick. You're going to drink the beer anyway. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
So talk to me about these beers themselves. So I was looking on your website. You've got Islander, you've got Legend, Stereotype, and Tis the Saison. And all of them are these fantastic caricatures with, like, scribbles.
Whoa, scribbles. No, I just offended him. The street artist that does all of our characters is a guy named Nathan Bowen. And he is part of our business, our creative director, if you will. So he has shares in our company, and his job is to take the story of the beer and then bring it to life with a character. So, like, for example, Stereotype, you'll notice the character. Yeah. When I was coming together with my range, I was like, right, cool, well, I want a lager, an APA, yada, yada, yada. Then, the inverted commas experts were like, no, don't do a lager. They all taste the same. Only white blokes drink it. They go to football matches and start fights. You don't want to do a lager. And I was like, well, that. Like, I know that lagers can taste different, and good beer should be for everyone. So I was chatting with Nathan about it. I was like, look, we're going to do like an English style lager, but with Hallertau hops. It's going to have like subtle nectar kind of fruits. It's going to be quite different, really crisp, refreshing. But here's some feedback I've had, and we sort of chatting about it, and then we were like, yeah, well, to hell with that. We're going to do a black girl in dungarees, and we're going to call it Stereotype, because that's kind of how we feel that lager and whatever drink you should have, it should be for everyone. And that character represents inclusivity and positive vibes, I guess. Legend, moving up the scale, would be, that's the first beer that I brewed with the guys at Charnwood. Very classic American pale ale, traditionally a cask recipe, in fact. And that is, I suppose, citrusy with a bit of a hoppy kind of zing, I would say. But that character means a lot to me, and actually is the character on my T-shirt from me selling my soul at this event today. But he has his hand up because he's brave enough to ask for help. And I think that what we're trying to encourage people to do is to either be a legend and ask for help, or be a legend and ask your mate if they need help. And that character really resonates with people, because I've been in a pub actually in London, and where it's been on in draft, and we were sat at the bar but a bit further down from where people were ordering, and I could hear them saying, "Oh, do you want to be the legend, or shall I be the legend this time?" And it was really interesting that people were sort of self-identifying with this beer, which was fantastic, and was super chuffed with that. Short and stout is the milk stout I was talking about earlier, and it was this kind of changing perceptions, like how often do we have to have, you make this initial perception of something where you're like, oh, I don't like stout, or oh, I don't like traveling, or oh, that person is really difficult. But actually, if you give something a go, could that open up a conversation or change something for you? Islander, that's Manu's beer that we brewed together, and is about when you're kind of on an island or you feel like you're on your own, how do you bring yourself back to centre, and how do you find a place of community and connection? Because if you want to learn about what great communities look like, go and talk to people from Pacific Islands, because those guys know how to look after one another and their families. And 'Tis the Saison, to be honest, the character is not quite right, but that's our fault, because we got a bit carried away with the whole winter theme. But it's actually a sort of beer to be drunk in spring and summer, but about that sort of changing seasons sort of vibe in life. But actually, when we do festivals in the summer and it's north of 25 degrees, that's the beer to
Plus,
go for.
I mean, who doesn't love a good pun? And 'Tis the Saison is just fantastic as a pun. I could really get on board with that one.
Yeah, exactly. We sell loads in December, so just needs to change character for the rest of the year.
Well, we've been talking a lot about December, like seasonal beers at that time of year are always these kind of really quite heavy, almost like stouty-esque or like really fruity. Actually, having a really refreshing Saison would be like a palate cleanse.
It's a shame this podcast isn't going out in December, because we're doing a great job of flogging Saison. But, what I do quite like about that style generally, so we use wild Belle Saison yeast in there, so a very traditional style, but really, really dry. That's the driest beer we have. So if you get that super cold, it's amazing in the summer. But during the winter months, if you drink that a little bit warmer than fridge temperature, so take it out of the fridge an hour before you're going to have it, or just let it breathe, you get all the herbaceous, sort of spicy floral notes, and is lovely to settle down with. So that beer kind of has a bit of two sides to it, a chameleon, if you will.
Now, you've touched on and talked about the foundation that underpins like the work that you're doing here for, kind of supporting and putting almost like the money where the mouth is, kind of, the actionable side of the kind of the work that you're doing here. And you kind of put it in this umbrella term of brewing positivity, which I love, by the way. I think that is just, it just makes a lot of sense. And you've got a target of reaching £1 million. That is a hefty target that you're kind of like reaching for. Talk to us a bit about the foundation and the kind of the work that you guys are planning on doing.
Yeah, so we know that it's going to take an awfully long time for us to donate £1 million out of our sales to support mental health initiatives. So we do fundraisers. So last year we shaved Richard Hibbard's head to raise money, and obviously Matt, you'll remember Hibbs from his time at Gloucester. And it was we were a bit concerned that it was like Samson, and once you cut the locks, whether he would lose his abilities, but he just retired instead. So We also this year, myself and a few rugby players that I played with down at Exeter are going to be climbing Mont Blanc in support of Looseheads, the rugby mental health charity. And in fact, actually, this is the first time I've spoken to anybody publicly about this. So if you can give me a little bit of time before you put this out, because there should be a link that goes live in time for this episode. But I think. Anyway, in answer to your question, Joe, the point for me was, how helpful was it me being aware of how I felt? Incredibly helpful. What was more helpful for me was knowing what I was going to do about it. And I feel like raising awareness is a really commendable thing to do in the mental health space. But what I'm terrified of is that we raise a load of awareness and then people don't know what to do about it. Because if you look around mental health services at the moment, thanks to our government that's in place at the moment, they are destitute and they don't have enough support. So we nominated 2 charities to support through the foundation, which was Samaritans and Young Minds, and we do Looseheads kind of separately with what we do. And we want to do as much as we can. I feel like if I revisit the pyramid that I talked about earlier, social, psychological, biological, we're not experts. I'm a very, very well-meaning bloke, and I would like to think that people know that they could reach out to me and ask, but I won't ever give advice. I'm not an expert, and I wouldn't want to put myself or that person in a difficult position. Thankfully, we have charities out there that do amazing work, but they need help and support, and we can certainly do that through the sales of our beers, and we're delighted to do so.
It's commendable, honestly. I mean, I know that you're saying it's not an expert, but I think that and the awareness is something that you're kind of doing as your primary focus within that social sphere. But I think that from kind of personal, I guess, kind of anecdotes over the last couple of years, I think the conversation around mental health is a lot healthier than it has ever been before. I think people are talking about mental health. I think there's an open conversation about mental health, which just wasn't there, maybe 5 to 6, 7 years ago. I don't think it's just, I think the pandemic kind of was a catalyst, but I think people's perceptions of that, of what mental health is and the impacts of mental health, and not just brushing it off as, I'll just go run around outside, drink some more water, those kind of like blasé comments. It's like, no, actually there's some real fundamental things here that, the kind of dealing with, that people are dealing with on the day-to-day basis. I mean,
I think so. I think if I was to make one correction to your very lovely summary of what we do, we're not really trying to raise awareness. It happens by what we do. So, and to give you an example, what we try and do with our customers, for example, is give nudges and prompts. Give them questions, give them things to think about, give them a question to ask their mate or whatever. What we're trying to do is help with skills that people can learn. And that's what I'm talking about. So we're sort of, there's awareness and then there's action, and we're sort of in this action bit. And then if you think about a pub group that we take on, so we take on a pub group and we will deliver workshops about skills, and we have mental fitness software that we can give to pub groups that can help them develop skills to prevent them ending up in trauma. Now, that I think is where we want to spend our time, not so much on this is a great big fucking bleeping problem, and we need your help to know how big this problem is. Actually, and this is where I think we do agree is not that we don't agree, but where what you said was absolutely bob on. The conversation is changing, and that's great because certainly when I was going through what I was going through, when I thought this was a mental health problem, the image that comes into my mind with mental health is a black and white image of somebody with their head in their hands, and actually mental health being on par with physical health is changing. There's still a way to go, and there's some people doing amazing stuff in that awareness space. And I hope you don't mind me making just a slight correction on what you said there, Joe. That was just important.
No, I think that's very fair. I think it's, as I said, this is a huge area, huge topic, and I think everyone's got like their part to play within this, and whatever they're carving out. I think, hugely. This is, there is not going to be a one, it's not a cookie cutter, template that one size fits all. It has to be adapted.
Yeah, no, I just echo that as well, because I think that I probably hadn't quite appreciated until you explained it again there, Greg, that actually the importance of what you're doing. Because I think I probably put myself in the category of maybe being more aware these days of mental health issues, but again, that actually just trying to put tools in the hands of people to take it on a step and be a positive agent for change, as and when, if the opportunity arrives, or being able to identify when there is a chance, then that seems incredibly important.
As I said earlier on, our beers aren't about us; they're about everybody else. And what we wanted to do was to highlight that a lot of good stuff happens every day. So we're brewing positivity, right? And we want to change that narrative around mental health and show you that actually there are some amazing people out there that just do phenomenal things. So last year, we opened up the People's Captain Awards, where I was like, right, let's find out who these people are and what they're doing. And you wouldn't believe some of the stories that we had in of just people that have just done amazing things for people for years. Now, the guy we chose in the end was a chap called Samuel, who was nominated by a girl called Georgia, who unfortunately had a tragic accident and has ended up in a wheelchair as a result, had a brain stroke. And he turned up every single day when she was in hospital, even when she was in a coma, didn't know he was there, would play his guitar, read her stories, and it was like miles from the hospital, would drive her to appointments, still does now. And there was something about this person that just turned up every day in that nature that made me think that is something that I want to encourage people about. And that, you talk about positive mental health, there's somebody that's just turning up every day, being a top mate. So we did it. We made the beer. There was a collab with 4Pure, actually, and we called it Steadfast. So Nathan made a knight in shining armour with a guitar instead of a sword. And it was amazing. We did a night at the 4Pure tap room down in Bermondsey. We had Woody Cook on decks, Nathan down doing his stuff. And it was honestly one of the best things I've ever been involved with, because we just had these Georgia and Samuel down and just talking about their story and what they did, and just this amazing celebration of the beer. I will just come back to, Matt, something that you said about teaching people skills, right, and just being aware. And as an anecdote, I'll give you an example. So every now and again, I get asked to do talks at companies, and I won't tell you the name of the company, but it's one of the big four. And they asked me to go and do a workshop on mental health in the workplace or whatever. I haven't got any corporate experience, so it wasn't necessarily. I don't know whether I was the best person. So I was talking about exactly what we're talking about now, and the reason I'm bringing this up is to make a good example. And she said that this lady, who's one of the partners, put her hand up and said, look, I just want a list of 10 things to look out for in people that are struggling. And I said, I totally understand what you're talking about. What I'd like to talk to you about is learning how to have conversations where you can really listen and hear what they're saying, so that you can identify that might be something you should ask more about. Well, no, look, I just want the 10 things. I just want a list of 10 things. Because a guy in my team went off sick and unfortunately was about to make a bad decision that he was no longer here anymore. And I had no idea. I had no idea something was wrong with him. I said, oh, okay. What did he say to you before he went off sick? He just said he was really struggling with his workload. But, I mean, we're all really struggling with our workload. So I thought, well, if you can't hear I'm really struggling with my workload and notice that might be a reason to start a conversation with someone, I don't know if me giving you a list of 10 things to look out for about a lack of eye contact or whatever, because unfortunately it becomes a tick box and people don't take notice of it. And the reason I'm sharing this story, because hopefully there'll be somebody listening that, rather than thinking about, oh, how can I be super vigilant and look out for these things that might come up in my everyday life, it's just being present and listening, really listening and understanding, so that you can just notice when someone says, I'm really busy at work. How are you getting on with that? Why are you so busy? What's happened? And just drilling into it, you'll find out. Do you see what I mean? So I think that there's lots that we can do on this social level that would massively improve our chances of not ending up in crisis.
Yeah, it's interesting though. I quite just that helps crystallize it in my mind a little bit as well, because it sounds almost as just though it's almost the seeing a door is open, go and walk through it, rather than seeing if a door is ajar or open or whatever it may be. So it's a slightly clunky analogy. I apologise, but yeah, it's about actually taking that first step towards helping, I suppose.
I think so, but I also think it's about not being clumsy, right? Because there's nothing more annoying than the, like, you know, people nosing around, or you know that when you, like, people ask you if you feel all right in the morning, and then by the end of the day, when 40 people have asked you if you feel all right, you're like, oh, I don't know if I actually feel all right, because everyone's asking me. But it's just about, you know, being that bit more present and just trying to be aware of those things. There are certain skills and stuff that, you know, can be taught, that you can listen better and learn how to be more active.
I think so. And also because the trained response to, are you feeling all right? It's like, yeah, I'm fine. You know, and that's the trained response. And if you get that 40 times a day, you're going to give the same response 40 times a day. But it's that one person that goes a little bit further that gets the actual response out of you, you know, rather than just the recall.
Absolutely. So I actually do a whole session on this where Ask Twice was an amazing campaign, but it doesn't invoke a different response. So I do this workshop thing called Ask Better with some experts in really difficult conversations. They teach people how to listen and talk and whatever. It's amazing. I'm not here to talk about that. But I think that so for somebody listening is like, okay, so how can we get people to be more honest? So I have a personal pledge that I've made to myself where if someone says, how are you? I'm just honest now, because and in my head, that says to me that when I ask you guys if you're all right, you know it's okay to be honest with me. So then it's just like, rather than being like, oh no, you said you're all right, Joe, but I noticed that your left eye twitched a little bit as you said that. I just want to check that you're okay. It's actually, yeah, I'm fine. I'm pretty tired because I've been stood up at a trade show all day with people trying to sell me nuts and digital open banks. But like, I'm all right. I'm having exactly, yeah. And I had 6 tequilas at 9:30. But I just think that there's a lot of behaviour that we can model and do that would be better, you know. And I feel like we don't need to overcomplicate stuff. We just need to, as I said before, what we're trying to do is meet people where they are in these social moments that are happening, right? And it's having a pint. What's going on? How's things? How's work? How's the missus? Da-da-da-da.
Well, we've heard a lot about the kind of, I guess, the long-term goals of People's Captain. What's kind of like the immediate, have you got any new beers coming out that people could get excited about? Anything you kind of new, your next trade show that you're going to be at, or have you got a kind of a pause in trade shows?
After today, we've got a pause in trade shows, Joe. No, I'm only joking. We have 3 or 4 new beers coming out this year. Some of those will be collabs. In fact, most of them will be collabs. And I'm a bit nervous about telling you who they are just now, but I can tell you that we'll be going with Tony's Chocolonely again, but in a slightly bigger way than what we did last year.
Nice.
I think that's okay to say that. I'm sorry, anybody from Tony's that's listening. Other chocolates are available, but they're not as good on anti-slavery, just in case they are. And we've got some amazing partners that we work with. So Budgie Smugglers, for example, have an amazing way of bringing people together. And we're looking to celebrate that more formally, if I can put it that way, in the coming weeks. Along with some collab stuff with one of our restaurants that we're with. And we have some other grand plans to bring out too. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to be pretty coy on that, because what I don't want to do is stitch myself up in 3 months' time and your millions of I'll Try That podcasts are going to get in touch with me and say, you said that you were going to have a rye 7.5% something.
It's what one thing our podcast listeners are, they're sticklers for the details. You know, they'll be right on you in a couple of days' time.
Yeah. I can only imagine.
The email inbox going already. But I suppose at the same time, there's plenty of ways to engage with you guys at People's Captain already. So that you guys are on Discord, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and Untapped if they want to keep on with the news and that sort of thing. I was thinking, Joe, we need to actually do a section where we sit and drink the beers and run through them in a forthcoming episode, if that's all right with you. I think it's all right with me.
Just to flag that, a slight sort of nervous hesitation when you said Discord there, but we actually launched Discord when we went live, and it was amazing, much like you guys in your in the middle of the pandemic, just a safe place for people to just open up and talk about what they wanted to. It is still live, and I am still there, and very happy to talk to anyone that's there. It's just not widely used by most of our customers now, but it's still very much live and kicking, and if anybody wants to get in touch, they're more than welcome.
I see, a thriving Instagram, account that you guys got there. I guess that's how most people could get in contact with you. If, go straight, slide into your DMs that way if it needs to be.
Slide into DMs, yeah, absolutely, yeah. And as I say, certainly through Discord, we are on Twitter. I think it's been, social's been a really interesting space actually, because I feel like there's a lot of positives about social media, loads, and there's also a lot of reasons why social media isn't good for us, and it's a really interesting thing that I've been thinking about for a while. Is how do we show people that we're there? How do we do what we do and just be a force for good and remind people that there is good stuff out there? Because our country, I feel at the moment, is becoming very divisive, and I feel like we do just need a bit of dose of some positivity and some good things from time to time. So that's why we're there, and that's what we exist for. We're not really there to talk about ourselves, and we just try and do the best we can and bring a bit of fun with it.
Very diplomatic way to sum up social media. Very accurate at the same time as well.
And the government in one go. Nailed that. No, thank you very much. Yeah. Media training for you.
I love it. Well, Greg, we love talking to you guys at People's Captain, another, amazing brewery with a force for good as well. And I think that kind of brewing positivity, if that's kind of the summation of People's Captain and what you guys are doing, and certainly from everything the stories and everything you've been talking about, I feel like you are delivering on that promise of brewing positivity. So really been fantastic talking with you. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me. I really, really appreciate it, and hope that we can do another one of these where we actually try the beer. That would be good.
Yeah, excited for that as well.
Yeah, let's get that sorted.
Cheers, Greg. Right.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
And that's all we have time for this week's episode of the I'll Try That podcast. And so from me, Joe, Rich,
Barbara, and Simo,
goodbye. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram,
Twitter,
I'll try that podcast.com,
and watch us on YouTube.
Goodbye now.